When you are leaving the company, taking a break, for some people, they enter a career break involuntarily. So you could be laid off, but a career break is this extra level of freedom if you are able to take one because you get to go out into the world and rethink what you want to do with your life going forward. And if changing careers, changing jobs, starting a business, launching your business, growing your business, if those are things that you want to do, you can do that without the pressure of having to come back to the same place that you left.
What's the emotion you were feeling when you were working full time, but you then knew what you wanted and you're like, how am I going to make this happen?
I would say the emotion was conflicted in a way where I still want to show up and do a good job. And I'm also pretending that I care and I don't care because now my dream is pulling me. And so it was this sort of conflict inside. It wasn't a conflict of like, what do I want? But it was a conflict of how do I show up? And, where's my energy and my focus going? But definitely a tension with these two realities and also an anticipation. Once I was clear on what I was doing and I started actually making a plan and saving money, the anticipation just continued to grow. And I was like, can I just be gone already? Please, can I just be there? I want to do this so badly.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today we are speaking with Katrina McGhee. And for those that don't know Katrina, she is a career break and a sabbatical coach, a speaker, and an author of the best-selling book, Taking a Career Break for Dummies. Katrina helps mid-career professionals design transformative life breaks that lead to happiness, personal growth, and lasting change. Katrina developed the Break Blueprint, a guiding framework that she's used to help nearly 100 people rejuvenate their lives by taking a break to travel the world, launch a business, write a novel, change careers, and more. Listen, I know a lot of you guys are working inside careers right now and you're building careers that many of you love, many of you like. And I know that many of you also have a side business. You've got a passion project that you're working on. And I know that a lot of you are burnt out from the work that you're doing, even if it is purposeful work. So this conversation is going to be for you to maybe take a break from the work you're doing. And I know you're thinking to yourself, Brandon, how could I possibly take a break from the work I'm doing? I'm a leader in this company. I've been here 10 years. I don't know how I could possibly take a break. Well, Katrina's going to help us figure out how we can make that happen for ourselves. So when you take away even just one thing from this conversation with Katrina, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You are the reason that the Be Better broadcast has grown to nearly 400 episodes, reaching thousands of people because you are the best part of the Be Better team. So without further ado, let's talk to Katrina. Katrina, it's great to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited, Brandon. I've been waiting for this for months and I'm just so excited. It's our day. It's our time.
Yes, finally, we made it happen.
Yeah.
So for background for everyone else, we met through Roger Williams, who has been on the show. I'll put a link to the episode of Roger in the description, guys, so you can check it out. But Roger is the host of the Bucket List show, and he talks to a lot of people who've lived out accomplishing things on their bucket list. And you are one of the few people that Roger has said to me, Brandon, you need to interview Katrina because she's helped a lot of people live out their bucket list. So if you guys are having vacations you want to do, things you want to achieve, this conversation is going to be for you. So I'm just really excited to have you here. Thank you again.
Of course. I am so excited to be here.
So let's just jump right into the controversy. All right. What is a career break? Let's start with defining what this thing even is.
Yeah, a career break is when you are unemployed. So when you are leaving the company, taking a break, for some people, they enter a career break involuntarily. So you could be laid off. But if you immediately are searching for your next job or, like the next thing, it's not technically the kind of break that we're going to be talking about today. You're basically in job search mode, right? It's more of a career transition and a bit of a gap than it is a full on break where you will get to be intentional. However, if you end up there involuntarily, you always have the ability to decide to own it and to think about how do I want to use this time for myself before I start job searching. So they can start involuntarily, but essentially it's a period of unemployment where you are investing your time in other things beyond your job, right? Sabbaticals are adjacent to this. Those are technically company or employer provided breaks where you know that you're coming back to the same employer, oftentimes the same role, not always. And then you can also take a leave of absence through your company, which allows for time off if they don't have a formal sabbatical process. So all three of those will apply to a lot of the things we talk about today, but a career break is this extra level of freedom if you are able to take one, because you get to go out into the world and rethink what you want to do with your life going forward. And if changing careers, changing jobs, starting a business, launching your business, growing your business, if those are things that you want to do, you can do that without the pressure of having to come back to the same place that you left.
Gotcha. So a career break is when you're voluntarily or involuntarily laid off, even, and you've got this space now between what you were doing and earning a living from and what you will be doing and earning a living from. And generally, what do a lot of people do when they get into this space in between? Like you said, they don't have the money saved up, they don't have the cushion, they don't have a plan. They're just looking at, I need a job. I need to find something now. And they go on Indeed or whatever it is. And there's no judgment for that. I mean, that's you got to do what you got to do, right? If you have a family, you're living paycheck to paycheck, maybe you're a sole provider, you got to do what you got to do. But what if you could take that time and, like you said, soul search, figure out what you really want to do, take a trip, go to a foreign environment, go to a foreign country, even. I know you talk a lot about that. Or you've got a sabbatical, which is very interesting. So a sabbatical is when you take a break, but you know that you're going back to that same company, into the
Yeah.
same role, even the same position. So that's something that wouldn't be provided by the company necessarily. Is that correct? That's just something where you'd say, hey, Mr. Manager, I'm going to be taking 2 months off, these 2 months, and then I want to come back. Is that possible?
So companies have some companies, I think it's around 12% in the US, but companies will have a sabbatical policy. When they have a sabbatical policy, that means that you have to like apply, you have to get approval. You can't just take it, but it's a benefit that you can apply and seek approval for. And the company will sort of like work with you on a timeline of when you can leave. Sabbaticals are oftentimes a lot shorter than career breaks for obvious reasons, like they need you to come back so they can keep things going. But essentially, you get to take this leave. The team works with your absence and they fill things in and make stuff happen. And then you have an agreed upon return date when you come back to work and transition back into the same employer's, business.
Got it. That's a really cool benefit. I've heard of sabbatical, but I thought it was like a religious thing. I never knew that it was. I thought it was a religious thing where you take a
Yeah,
break.
well, that's how it started. So you weren't wrong.
Oh, okay.
And it's like taken from that, right? And evolved
Yeah.
into I think like what is it? Academia and religion both sort of have, like traditionally had sabbatical policies where you can take these leaves and go on these, personal things or academic research things and journeys and things like that. So yes, you are not
Cool.
wrong.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about what inspired you to originally take a career break and then eventually center your entire business and really your life around what you do now, helping people to take career breaks and really experience and live their lives.
Yeah. So for my high achievers out there and high performers listening to this episode, maybe you can relate, but you know, at the point where I felt like I had achieved so many goals, I had an MBA from a top 20 program. I was a math major at a top institution in the US. I was an actuary for 8 years and passed, all of the math exams. I had achieved all these things. And it was after my MBA when I started my second career as a market researcher, I realized I'm not any happier. In fact, if I'm being honest, I feel really lost because the life I had envisioned as a kid and all of the creative, exciting, dynamic parts of me that I'd nurtured, through my teenage years were gone. And work was my life. And it didn't make me feel lit up. And I didn't feel like the path I was on was going to lead to a place where I felt good, where I felt proud of what I've done in a way that like really resonated deep within me. I was exhausted, I was burnt out, but I was also misaligned and I didn't recognize the life that I had. I didn't want the life that I had, but I didn't know how to change it. And so it took a lot of work. I worked with a life coach myself in 2011 for several months, and it took me a long time to unpack all of the beliefs about what a successful person should do, what a responsible person should do, right? Firstborn over here, right? Like
Hmm.
lead the way, be responsible. Um, And when I stripped all that away, the truth was that I wanted to see the world. That was a dream I'd had since I was a little kid, but I thought I missed my chance because I didn't get to study abroad in college. And no adults, no successful MBA, business school fueled adults go take like a sojourn and just travel around the world for whatever. But I was like, this is what I want. Now I have to find a way to make it happen. And it wasn't easy, but it was definitely possible.
So you figured out what you wanted, and then you asked yourself the question, how am I going to make this happen?
That is exactly it, and let me tell you, the picture was not pretty. I had $1,500 in my bank account. When I estimated what I thought this year off would cost, I I needed about $38,000 to do it, and to have some money on the side as a buffer in case something went wrong. I didn't have that money. I didn't have immediate access to that money, and I also had just invested tens and tens and tens and thousands of dollars into my education for my degree, and now I'm saying, like, only a year in, I'm working to quit this and take a career break. Like, what will I come back to? Do I have enough experience before I go? I mean, there were a lot of questions, but to your point, it was like, not, "Can I do this?" was the question. No, because I needed it. When I had that awareness and that epiphany that this is what I wanted, it just rang so true and it resonated so deeply. I was like, "How do I make this happen?"
Yeah. So you're working full time.
Mhm.
You're feeling this what's the word? You're feeling this tension and you're feeling this what's the word? What's the emotion you were feeling when you were working full time, but you then knew what you wanted and you're like, how am I going to make this happen? Was it like tearing in multiple directions? Like what was the emotion?
That's so good. Yeah, tension is definitely an accurate description. I would say the emotion was conflicted in a way where I still want to show up and do a good job, and I'm also pretending that I care and I don't care because now my dream is pulling me. And so it was this sort of conflict inside. It wasn't a conflict of like, what do I want? But it was a conflict of how do I show up? And
Yeah.
where's my energy and my focus going? But definitely a tension with these two realities and also an anticipation. Once I was clear on what I was doing and I started actually making a plan and saving money, the anticipation just continued to grow. And I was like, can I just be gone already? Please, can I just be there? I want to do this so badly.
Yes. Okay. So you had a plan, you knew what you wanted. And then one of the steps to how am I going to make this happen was to save up a certain amount of money. For you, that was $40,000, right?
Yep.
Okay. And
Absolutely. Yes.
after you made that plan and you had that goal, how long did it take you to save the $40,000 working in this job, feeling that conflict?
Yeah, 18 months. So
18
I was
months.
pretty yeah, so I was pretty proud of myself. I mean, I had a lot of change that I had to do, but I believed this took me a while to learn, by the way, but I discovered, we'll say, that deprivation is not the path to saving $40,000. I think that's the obvious starting place, but it's not sustainable. And so at some point, I had a crash moment where I was like, I can't keep living this way where I feel like everything costs money. I'm afraid to go outside. I
Hmm.
mad every time I get in my car because I'm like, I'm gonna have to pay for the gas. I mean, it was like really all consuming and very stressful. And I sort of had this breakdown moment. And then I realized it's about prioritization. I can do whatever I want to do, but I do it with intention and I'm setting my priorities. And this break is high on my list, but it's not always the top thing. So, as I started to really sit with what that looked like, one of the things I did is I created an exploration fund. So, every month I had $200 that I was diverting to this fund and I had to spend it. And what I discovered was having to spend $200 a month made me be resourceful, right? Because it could go very quickly, but it also made me put a lot of attention and intention into, do I do things in my life on a daily basis or a weekly basis that help me feel like I'm exploring life, that I'm living my
Mm,
life, that I'm having adventures, that I'm having fun, that I'm discovering new things? And I actually found that I was putting more effort and more focus and more attention into that when I had this fund, even though I had a stricter budget and had to save. So there were some tricks that I did, but I did Invisalign, which was like 3 grand at the time. I did
yeah.
laser hair removal, which was like 2,500. It wasn't that I didn't do anything, but I was just so intentional about the things I invested in, and it really came down to priorities. And so I felt empowered to do whatever I wanted, but oftentimes my career break was the priority when it came to where could I put this money?
Wow. Okay, great. And how did you come up with the number 40,000? Did you know how long you wanted to take a break for? How did you come up with that number specifically?
So, former actuary, math nerd, love a good Excel spreadsheet. So, whenever I set the goal of taking this break, I was like, well, what is this going to cost? And how long is it going to take me to save the money? I mapped out a 1-year break, so 12 months, and I thought about it in cycles. So there was the part where I stayed at home for a few months over the holiday, very affordable. There was the road trip through the US, about 3 to 4 months, semi affordable. And then there was the international exploration, which was probably going to be expensive. I broke these things down and tried to estimate each of those seasons separately and then added it all together. And then I added in a buffer for what if I have a health emergency? What if I have to buy an emergency plane ticket home? What if something happens? What if I've just estimated this incorrectly, right? So then I'm rounding those numbers up and adding $5,000 to the emergency fund. And then I also owned a townhouse and I was like, what if the HVAC goes out? What if the tenant needs something? What if I have to replace an appliance? So that was another 5K. So when I added all these pieces together, it came out to about 38. So when I was saving, I just hit 40K, which was amazing. But I
Yeah.
originally thought about 38K. So that's how I developed it. And then I just started getting to work to save it.
Okay, so you're a very detailed mathy person, all right?
Yes.
So when you're helping other people do this who aren't detailed and mathy, is it just simply you helping guide them through it, or are there certain questions you ask them because you planned out the whole trip, which is important? Because there are planners and there are spontaneous people who
Yeah.
would just say, "I'm going to take a year off. Hey, Mr. Manager, I'm done. I saved up 20. 20 should be enough." And then they figure out what they want to do. But the problem
Yeah.
with that is then you're figuring out what you want to do without having made the plan ahead of time. So now you have a much more unlimited reserve, which could have prevented you, like specifically, from taking the international trip or going on the road trip or having the emergency expenses put away that you probably didn't have to use, but you had them because you planned for them, which just creates peace of mind. So is not a generic way, but is there like a format that you help people to figure out this is how much money you need to put away?
Yeah, no, because it's the breaks are so different. So some people
Okay.
stay at home and they never travel. They have kids or they just are in a very burnt out stage where their rest is their primary, right? They're like, I just
Mm,
need to deal with my health, get my health back on track, have some habits, get some hobbies again, and just restore and recharge. And so for them, that looks really different. And it's largely dependent on what their household expenses were, pre-break. And that varies wildly as well. So actually, what is interesting is that as much of a planner as I am, I do offer tools to help my clients, track their spending, budget to save for a break, and then estimate the cost of a break. But what I
mhm,
find is that I attract a biased subset of people. If you're going to hire a coach and invest in having a coach to make this a life-changing, successful, transformative experience, you're probably putting some thought into your finances. Now, you might not be
true.
tracking and budgeting, but you're probably investing. You probably have some retirement going. Like most people aren't going to be like, I've never thought about my future, but I'm going to spend, $1,500, $2,000 on a coach and I'm going to take off and take a career break. So I find within the bias set, a lot of my clients have, they have access to the money or they see a vision for how they're going to get it. And it's
True.
really just creating an estimate based on their unique situation. And honestly, Brandon, the hardest part is for them to actually give themselves permission to spend it. So when people say, I
Mm,
don't think I can afford a break, one truth I have learned, I would put this on like a top 10 truths, is that you have to ask the next question. What does it mean to afford a break? Because the people that say that oftentimes, to me, right? Again, bias set, but the people that say that they have access to that money, or they
yes.
have immediate ways to get it, but they don't feel like they have permission to spend it, and so that's a whole separate conversation, and I
Wow.
found that most of my energy goes towards the mindset piece, and the permission piece, and the framing piece versus the tactical saving piece.
Yeah, no, it's so funny you say that because I have a friend of mine who just recently he doesn't really buy a lot of gifts or buy things for himself, and he was talking about buying this Gucci handbag for his girlfriend. And
Uh-huh.
I was like, really? It's just a very random thing, right? Gucci
Yeah.
handbag, unless you're already a Gucci person. So I was like, oh, how much is that? And he's like, it's like 1,500. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I said, why don't you buy, gifts for yourself, gifts for her? And he's like, oh, I just don't like spending the money. I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, how are you doing financially? And he pulls his account up. He's got like 90 grand saved. And I was like, dude, I was like, buy
I
the freaking handbag, like do something for yourself and like celebrate. Like some
yeah.
people, it's the exact thing that you just said. They have access to it, but they don't. I feel like a big part of it also comes down to self-worth, right? Am I worth the vacation? If I spend it on the vacation or the 1 year break, that means I'm not going to be able to put it towards something that I should be putting it towards, whether it's
Yeah.
401k or investments. And people have this idea of what they should do based on what other people have said. And those other people probably aren't even doing the thing that they're telling you that you should do. So that idea of self-worth, what was that question? What it look like to afford the trip? Like, what was that question? Because that was powerful.
Yeah, well, it's just what does it mean to afford,
What
right? To
does
be
it
able to
mean?
afford a break. What does it mean to afford? And to your point, so many people get good at saving and saving becomes the default. And
Yeah.
it's like this connection that your brain makes to the more I save, the safer I am. And that's not like there are
There's
missing
some
pieces in
truth
there.
in it. There's
Right, there's
some
some
truth.
truces, but there's missing pieces, right? It's
Yeah.
not the whole picture. And so at some point, things are out of our control. Yes, more money does help us prepare for more challenges, but there are some challenges that money is irrelevant for. And also, right, it's about balancing the fact that you're going to be here for as long as you think you are. I
Mm.
really believe that nothing is guaranteed and time, right, is not promised to us. For me, a break is about investing in your well being. Whether you're traveling, whether you're at home, whether you're writing a book, it's about pouring into yourself and saying, I've been sacrificing for so many years to save all this money, to work well at my job, to give the job and, maybe the people in my life the best of me. Don't I deserve some of this too? Don't I deserve some of this time and attention and care? And a break is time for you to turn around and pour that back into yourself, right? And so it's like, this perceived idea that, like, it's better to always be saving and never investing. It's like an investment in your well-being is insanely valuable with massive dividends as well, and so it's like balancing that out and realizing that it's not just a race to who can die with the most money in their bank account. It's like, how do I use this money I've worked so hard for to, like, create the best life experience I can have and to have the best journey, and part of that requires investing in the present moment.
What's up, Be Better family? It's Brandon Eastman here. And as a thank you for tuning in to the Be Better broadcast, I want to give you a very special gift. For a limited time, you can get a free digital copy of my book titled Be Extraordinary, Your Guide to Self-Mastery. This book is packed with insights and actionable steps that will help you to unlock your fullest potential in the 5 key areas of your life. But that's not all. Along with the book, I also want to give you the audiobook version absolutely free. Imagine having the power to transform your life right at your fingertips and in your ears anytime, anywhere. Go grab your copy at bebetterindustries.com/book. You'll also find the link in the episode show notes. Go and grab your copy and join me in making a positive impact on the world. Now back to the show. I love that. And this is the thing, that same person who's just saving the money, which by the way, I think everyone should save some money.
Yes,
Very
I
important. I
did,
just know
clearly.
exactly. And you had a plan before you did it, but
Mhm.
he was saving without the plan, right? Just saving to save, just for saving's sake. He also has been with the company 5 years. He never uses sick time. He never uses his paid time. He's got hundreds of hours of paid time. And
Yeah.
it's like, we think about paid time as, oh, I'm going to go on a week vacation. But what if instead you plan to use that paid time for the break itself? What if you could be paid to go on break? So the point I'm making as well, that goes along with what you're saying, is take advantage of these benefits that you might be accruing and the benefits that you may have working for a corporation. And obviously, a lot of corporations don't offer those things, but many do. And, like you
Mhm.
just said, 12% offer a sabbatical. I didn't even realize that companies offer sabbaticals. So it just goes to show that you don't know what you don't know. So become very educated on the leave that your company allows you to take so that you can take one of these trips for yourself, not just for vacation, but maybe to work on something like what you just said, Katrina, a book or a screenplay, or just to rest and recharge. Okay, great. So you made this plan. You're working full time. You're like, I need to save 40 grand to make this happen. You save the money. What happens once you realize I've got the money saved up? It's 18 months since I made this plan. You're still feeling conflicted. Tell me about the conversation you had to then leave. Tell me about that chapter.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about conflicted. We talked about anticipation. I gave 8 months notice, Brandon. I was out. Yeah, I couldn't do it. I mean, what? Come on. Life is short. I'm here to live. And I truly felt like I have so much excitement for what I'm creating. Once I was 8 months away from my goal, I had been saving money on the regular. And like the amount I was saving just kept increasing as I got better and better. So I knew 8 months out, like, I'm gonna hit this in August. And I just knew it, right? Like separate of something crazy happening, like I'm gonna hit this. But it also felt like I don't wanna pretend. I have a limited amount of energy, and spending it pretending to care about my IDP, my 5-year plan, what my next rotation was gonna be, like, I just didn't care. And I felt like all of our time was gonna be wasted having pretend conversations that I didn't even wanna have. So instead, I was like, "Let me just own it and go in there and tell my boss in January, like, I'm planning to leave to take a trip around the world in August." So that's exactly what I did. I was nervous. I was, like, not sure how he was gonna receive it. Part of me, my fear brain, was like, "What if they let you go?" But when I looked around, I was like, "Why would they let me go? I'm trying to live my life. I'm a good freaking employee. I'm smart. I've been here for, at that point, like 2 years, 2.5 years. Why would they let me go? I'm not going to a competitor." So I just really didn't listen to fear brain. And I was like, I think this is a great thing. And honestly, if they do let me go, I might get a little severance and I'll just have a different kind of break and maybe it will be shorter. So I
Yeah.
walked in and I sat down and I told my manager, his name was also Brandon. I was like, "Hey,
Okay.
Brandon." Yeah, I was
Cool.
like, "Hey, Brandon, I got some big news. I decided that I'm going to quit my job and travel around the world, but not until August." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of excited about it." And he was like, "Wow." And then he was like, "Are you sure? I mean, 8 months is a long time. Are you gonna change your mind between now and then?" And I was like, "No, I've been saving. Like, I'm really sure. Like, I've got a plan and everything." And he was just like, "I mean, that's amazing." And then he was like, "I've never had someone tell me this before. I think it's fine. I just have to go check with HR and make sure that there's nothing I'm supposed to ask you or like tell you to do, but I think it's fine." And I was like, "Okay, great. Let me know." And then he came back to me, I think like later that day or the next day and was like, "I talked and like everybody's fine. They just want to know what your last day is closer. Like when we get into the summer, they want a specific day so they can like start looking for your replacement." And I was like, "Great." And then I got to start telling people, "I'm taking a break. I'm gonna quit my
Wow.
job. I'm gonna travel around the world." And people were so freaking excited for me. And I got to be authentically me. I got to be excited. And I didn't have to waste time with my IDP or my 5-year plan. I just got to spend my energy showing up for my job and then getting excited and continuing to save for my break.
Yes. And that is the ideal situation where you have a manager or a leader who understands what you're looking to do and says, "Oh, wow, I think that's amazing." Because listen, when you tell your employer this, a big part of their brain, most of them, is going to be, "I wish I was doing that. Why am I not doing that?" So then jealousy can creep in, right? And then the idea of they're going to have to replace you can creep in. So I'll ask you rather than give my thoughts. Do
Okay.
you recommend the same approach to everybody to give 8 months notice if they see that the trajectory of their savings is going to reach the point where they will be able to go on the trip?
Of no. I would say 8 months is not right for everyone, but I will say I took a second break, a second career break. This one was partly to launch my business, so it's kind of a break, kind of a working break, but, I gave 4 months notice at that job. So,
Okay.
I'm all about big notice. What I tell my clients is that I recommend at least 2 months if they can, 1 month minimum, and here's why. This is essentially why. Everybody has to find their right number, but this is what I think people miss when they're thinking about giving a break. They're really afraid, and usually our brains go to, what if they let me go? What if they fire me? I don't want to give them too much notice so that, like they'll be like, "Well, just leave then." But when you come to your boss, if you are looking for an advocate, if you don't want to burn bridges, if you want to
Yeah.
leave on great terms, you have to back up your words with action. So when I say to you, like if you were my boss, if I was like, "Brandon, listen, I'm so excited. I'm scared to tell you this, but I've got some big news. I've realized upon reflecting on my life, I really need a break. Like, I'm not showing up at the level that I know I'm capable of. And I have these dreams I've never actually given space and time to. And I just feel like I'm realizing now it's now or never. And I'm so excited. I have decided I'm going to take this time. I'm going to travel the world, or I'm going to spend time just like pouring into myself and restoring. And I'm really excited, but I also want you to know I want to make this the smoothest transition for the team as possible. I don't want you
Mhm.
guys to feel like you're left in a lurch. So I'm giving you 2 months notice so that we can plan for my exit, and that I'm willing to do whatever you need me to do to show up to make this transition as smooth and painless as possible. That is my words meet my action, right? That is setting my team up for success, my manager up for success, so that when I leave, they're like, "Oh god, thank God she, like, gave us that notice because she left us in a better place," and you add to, like, your list of advocates. People are
Mhm.
excited for you to take this break if you can articulate what the value is and why you're doing it, what you're moving towards, and when you leave with more notice, they're like, "Yeah, she didn't crap on us and just, deuces, I'm out." It's, like, amazing, like, she tried to help us get to the place where we could, function without her. That is great. So, I say give more notice than you feel comfortable giving. I mean, some of my clients do just give 3 or 4 weeks. A lot of them give around 2 months, I would say 6 to 8 weeks, so that the team has time to figure
Yeah.
out how they're gonna do what they do with that person being gone. But here's the secret. Of all the clients I've had that I've coached on giving their notice, because that's a big tension point for a lot of people and one of the, like, fear points of, like, if I'm gonna take a break, I'm gonna have to give my notice. When you are clear and articulate the purpose of your break and you do it with thought and care in the timeline, whatever that looks like for you, I have had every single client that I've coached through that process has come to me and said, so far, knock on wood, their manager said something completely better than what they were expecting. They have said to me as a client, "That went even better than I expected." Even if they're
Mhm.
like, "My manager can be a little spiteful and other people have quit jobs and she talks trash about them and it's crap." Like, that manager ended up giving my client an offer to do a part-time job over the summer because they loved her work so much, and they were like, "We'll pay you. We'll do it like part-time. Would you ease out? Just give us like 2 months." Part-time didn't exist. My client actually wanted part-time, but she was like, "No one's ever gotten part-time. We don't do part-time, but I would love to have part-time over the summer as I'm, like, going into the break to save a little bit more money." And preemptively, her manager was like, "I don't wanna lose you. Would you consider part-time?" Right? So, being thoughtful and giving ample amount of notice so that your actions and words align can really create, like, an opening for people to wanna support you even more.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, so you gave them the notice, the time comes to leave. Did you know, by the way, that you didn't want to return to the same company in the same role?
I
So you
absolutely
already
did.
knew.
That was part yeah, so for me, my break was part self-discovery, where I was like, "What is it that I wanna be doing? Because it's not this." And I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't this. And so for me, it was a way I could break free of the path I was on and feel like I was moving towards something really good, so that the fear and the, like, lack of an answer and the unclear like, the uncertainty wouldn't, like, weigh me down. I was like, "I wanna go be stimulated, excited, engaged, go live my life." And I'm hoping through that process and that energy, I'll have more clarity about what I wanna do when the break is over.
Okay, cool. Would you say that a lot of your clients also don't want to return to the same job, same role, or they go back to the same thing? What do you notice a lot of people want? I'm just curious.
Yeah, a lot of people that's a great question. A lot of people want more freedom and more fulfillment, and they usually feel like they're not gonna get it in the current situation, whether it's the employer, the job, the career. There's something about where they're at now. They're like, I don't think I'm getting this here," but they're also burnt out. And so what I find is that when they go on the break, the people that were just burnt out and were lacking that sense of, like, ignition and, like, this, like, bright light coming out of them, and it was more energetic, they oftentimes will return to a similar role. For them, it's enough to go have some adventure, pour their cup, fill their cup, heal the burnout, and they're like, "Okay, I do wanna go back to what I was doing, and I feel like I have a slightly different perspective, and I view my life in a different way, and I feel more empowered, and I'm also restored. I'm not gonna burn out again. I have better tools now. I can go back." But a lot of my clients are lacking that fulfillment in the path they're on, and so for them, the break is a chance to figure out what they could do instead. And so sometimes it's starting a business, and sometimes it's making a pivot in their career. But essentially, my belief is that if you're doing deep reflective work during this time off and you're taking a career break, you're going to change your perspective on yourself. You're going to see yourself both comfortably and uncomfortably, and you're going to shift a lot of your self identity. And if that shift happens and you support it, you can come back to a very similar position as a completely different version of yourself and have a
Mm.
completely different experience post break, which does happen for some of my clients. They return to similar roles in similar industries, but they have a completely different version of life going on and they feel so much better in that second version.
Yeah, no, I believe that. Okay, great. So you go on your trip. Can you give us a glimpse of what your trip looked like? You already kind of did, but give us a glimpse of what it looked like, maybe if it was different than what you told us earlier. And what were the benefits for you of taking that break? And it was 2 months, the first break?
Oh, my break was
20 what?
20 months.
20. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I
Almost
was
2
gone for almost
years?
2 years. Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Tell me about it. Well, give us a glimpse of what it was
Okay,
like and
sure.
what.
Yeah,
Wow, I didn't realize 2 years. Okay, you probably already
yeah.
said it. I just didn't hear it.
Yeah, that's okay. Your brain was probably like, "She didn't mean 20." I heard
I
2.
was thought you said
That's
20 days. I
crazy.
was like, "Oh, shorter than
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought."
Oh, yeah, no, 20 months. So for my 20 months, I started with the road trip and I did 3-ish months around the US. My boyfriend at the time decided at the last minute he was gonna come with me, which was fun, so we did a road trip together, and then I ended up back at home. I spent several months at home over the holidays with my family, so, it was very unexpected, but about 7 days before my break started, my younger brother unexpectedly passed away, and it
Oh,
was, like, the worst moment of my whole life, and, it definitely colored my break experience. I mean, I've been planning, as we talked about, for so long, this was definitely not part of my plan,
yep.
and so for me, that time at home was like the first Christmas, the first Thanksgiving. Like it was a lot of it was processing grief and also being present with my family. So I spent a lot of time there, but then it was time to go abroad. So I took a bus to DC, flew from DC to Medellin, Colombia. I started in Colombia. I spent a couple weeks in Colombia. I stayed with a coworker's family while I was in Medellin, and I only knew this coworker through like 2 work meetings. Like I had 2 work meetings with him my whole
Wow,
existence at the same company. But he was like, "I have a cousin there. You should go to Colombia and you should stay with her and her family." And I did, and it was
that's
freaking
funny.
fantastic. Yeah, and then I went down to Argentina. I fulfilled a teenage dream of living in Buenos Aires for a month. I rented an Airbnb and just hung out down there. And then I
Whoa.
flew to Western Europe and went to Spain and Italy and France. Came home for a second to check on my mom. She had some health issues, and then flew across the world to Southeast Asia and spent 4 months out there. Got certified as a yoga teacher in Bali, did a retreat out there,
Wow.
came back. Yeah, relocated to Denver and spent 3 to 4 months in a reentry period where I was exploring things that sparked me, that, piqued my interest, things that maybe could lead to new careers, and just kind of trying to figure out what my next move was gonna be before I started applying for jobs.
What a trip. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's, because I could dive into every part of that, but for the sake of getting to more things,
Yeah.
let's keep moving. So okay, so you're at that point now in Denver where you're like, okay, it's almost time for me to re-enter the working world because I got to make money still. How did you go about finding a new job that would fulfill the parts of you that needed to be fulfilled, if that makes sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. And my answer is a little bit complicated. It's short, but it's a little complicated. So the real story is that I had a bridge job. So for me, when I came back, I didn't have that massive epiphany I really wanted where I was like, boom, you should be a dot 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 for the rest of your life and have that like that one easy answer where I was like, great, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life, and then all of my problems are solved. I didn't have that. And in the absence of that, I felt really Oh, man, I felt really, like, sad, honestly, and a little disappointed, but then in the space of not knowing what that thing, that perfect thing was, I decided to think about what my new goal was. So if the career break and saving for the break and taking the break had been my goal for years, what is my new, "I'm gonna figure this out." And I realized I wanted to dabble in something like coaching because my life coach changed my life, but also I've always loved people, I've always been curious about people. But I also just thought, man, it would be so cool to be free as an entrepreneur. And that's not something I had ever thought of before, but it was more the lifestyle that was appealing to me of being able to have a lot of autonomy and freedom and flexibility. And I thought, if I was ever going to try something like a coaching business, I need to be debt free because I know myself. And if I have a $700 a month student loan payment due, no matter what my business is doing, I will put so much pressure on that business, it will fail. I will walk away from it. Like I can't handle that kind of pressure constantly financially hanging over me. So then I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to get debt free, how can I do that as fast as possible? Corporate, I know. Corporate, I had experience in. So at that point, it was like, I need a bridge job that is better and more fulfilling than the last job I had, but is still corporate because I want to pay these bills off as fast as possible and become debt free. And that's what I did. So from the day I uploaded my resume into the system and like updated it to reflect my break to the day I accepted a job was just 5 weeks. And in those 5 weeks, I landed 5 job offers. One was a dream job. If I was going to have a corporate job, it was a dream job. One was a 30% raise and a promotion. One was a career change. I had a lot of great options, which is what planted the seed for the work that I do today. But in that moment, I decided go with the dream job, which paid about what I had left in my last corporate job. And I got to work in an industry. So same role, market researcher, but an industry I was really passionate about, which is natural and organic products. Like I'm that consumer. I shop at co-ops and Whole Foods, I'm that person. And so to
Yeah.
work in that space on those brands was like, wow, this is amazing. And so that's what I did. And I went to work and I paid off all of my remaining student loans. It was about $42,000 in less than 2
Awesome.
years. And then I got certified as a life coach. And then that bridge job enabled me to like lean into my starting my third career, which is working as a life coach to help people take breaks and change their lives as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. So you go back into the corporate world, but again, I just think it's really important to point out this underlying thread of this whole conversation is you always have a plan of some sort. So you go back into the corporate world, but you're not just like, okay, that was an awesome 2-year break and now I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing, right? You
Yeah.
said, okay, this is going to be a bridge job for me because I have an idea of what I want to do. Maybe not a completely fleshed out idea. Like you wouldn't know then what you're doing right now, right?
Yeah,
But
no,
you had
I
an idea.
not at all.
And
Yeah.
that plan is so important because without the plan, then you're just over and over and over. It's the same thing, right? You're in the rat race over and over and over. But you made a plan. You go and you spend another couple years in that business. You work your ass off in the meantime, getting certified as a life coach, paying off your student loans. Like you can't discount how much work you must have put in during that time in order to make what you're doing now a reality.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. It feels really good though when it's for a good reason, right? I think a
Mhm.
lot of us put in a lot of work and we do it because we think that's all we have to do or that's what we're supposed to do. And it's draining and kind of soul sucking at times. But I think if you're doing it with intention, it can be fueling in a way. It's still exhausting sometimes, but it also gives you a lot. And I think to your point about me always having a plan, I would say even if you're not as much of a planner as me, and sometimes life throws you curveballs that you didn't plan for and you have to adjust, if you can at least have a clear intention of what you really want or what your highest priority is, you can always be adapting your plan to keep and continue like trying to fulfill that intention or that vision. And so, you know, honestly, like, I was saving all this money and I was doing so good, and then halfway through that process, so a year into my dream job, it stopped being a dream job, and the role had shifted, and suddenly the work I was doing felt very admin-like, and I was like, "Oh my god, I have an MBA, I, like, am a thinker, I was
Mhm.
presenting in front of presidents of companies about natural and organic trends, and now I'm, like, doing decks all the time, like PowerPoint decks." I was like, "What is this?" So I actually left that job, right? Because
Oh,
again,
wow.
intention. I'm clear I wanna be more fulfilled while I'm doing this, and I'm doing this so that I can get my financial freedom, and I feel so empowered. So when a new opportunity sort of semi-emerged, I jumped on it, and I actually transitioned to a job that paid me a little bit less money because it was a
Mhm.
startup and I was so excited, and I still paid off my debt in less than 2 years. But I
Cool.
was feeling fueled and motivated and excited because I had that intention at the forefront of my mind and that vision and that goal. And so I'd say that's the most essential part, I think, of a plan because sometimes the steps you take will need to change as you start to get into the plan.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. So let me ask you this. What advice would you give to someone who is, let's say they've been with the same company for 12 years
Mm.
and they are transitioning to a new company now. Maybe they took the break in the middle, or maybe they're going right into it because you've got the expertise to speak to this. What advice do you have to people who are entering a new place of work, maybe even in a new industry, based on what you've learned from doing it a handful of times?
Yeah, entering so you're saying like advice for people that are entering into a new industry or a new place of work?
Yeah, just entering into a new job, maybe when they've been in the same one for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so obviously, like permission to feel uncomfortable, permission to have your worst fears pop up in your head and to think that this is never going to be as good as it was as far as your level of comfort and familiarity. Like just permission to be a human, having human thoughts. That's number one. Because if you make yourself wrong for it, you go down a whole spiral. So, number one is just to know that change is hard. And number two is to decide it is different. So is there one thing that you can focus on that you really wanted to get out of the fact that this is a different experience? It might be industry knowledge, it might be exposure to new tools or a new way of doing things or new framework. This might be a bridge job. It might literally be the paycheck. You might be there for the paycheck because you have a big dream of, going full time in your own business or taking and saving for a break or, buying your first home, like whatever it is. If you can be connected to like why, like one truth about why I'm here, you can focus on that and that can be very grounding when you have to do all the hard things. But outside of that, I would say practically, networking is so important. Like the more people that you can meet, talk to, ask questions, like do you have, one tip for me about, something I should know or something that I should do or something that you did that helps you acclimate really quickly or just feel like you really got a sense of this place and to be successful here, but just really having connections with people because navigating people is a skill that you need in a corporate setting or like a
Mm,
business setting. And the more
in
you can
life.
do that, I think the easier your transition can be.
Yeah, I mean, you went to a foreign country and stayed with the sister of someone that you worked with. Like navigating people is life. Like to even to especially to live with a stranger. Like that's
Yeah.
again, I wanted to ask you more about that, but I want to keep moving. But that very interesting. It's very cool that you did that.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're a very extroverted person, and not everyone would do that. But at least outwardly, you were extroverted. Because I'm
Yeah, I'm an
introverted.
inside introvert, but I'm actually an introvert, but I have a very extroverted side and
Huh.
I can turn it on and I get really excited about people. That's the thing is I like people, but I recharge on my own. But yes, that the cousin that I stayed with had a son and a husband and she didn't speak any English and I speak minimal Spanish. And when I got
Wow.
there, the husband he is bilingual, he was not at home yet because he was at work. So we had to like navigate 2 hours of hanging out never
Wow.
having met and, like, not knowing each other with, like, speaking different languages. It was really funny.
That's wild. What a cool
Yeah,
story. Awesome. And you wouldn't have that story if you didn't make this move. Like that's the beauty of this
absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah,
Okay, that was fantastic advice, by the way. So it's okay to feel uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. Change is hard. Acquire as much industry knowledge as possible so that you can be more comfortable. And I love what you said about the networking thing. I know so many people who start a new job, and especially being a trainer for years where I trained over 1,000 salespeople, very few of them came up to other people and said, "Hey, do you have one tip for me? Is there one thing you can tell me that will make this transition easier for me?" I don't think I ever heard that. People would ask me as the trainer, but they wouldn't ask the
oh.
people around them. So it's great advice that's simple but extraordinary at the same time. Okay, I had a couple more questions, but rather than ask what I think people want to know, when you work with clients, when you work with new people, when it comes to taking a career break of their own, what are let's talk about the top two struggles that your clients face. What would you say is the top struggle that your clients face? And then we can talk about the second one after that.
Yeah, so fear, and if you're more specific and hone in on that, I would say the top there's kind of like 2, money and career, but probably career is actually at the top. So again, by a sample, people that have been high performers, if you're hiring a coach, you're being thoughtful about this transition because you have a lot at stake, because you've invested a lot in your career. And so as someone that has invested a lot in your career and seen some success in that career, it feels really scary to imagine giving it up, even if temporarily. And not knowing if you're taking a career break and not a sabbatical. So if you are, going into the unemployment land, it can feel really scary to sit in the uncertainty of what will I come back to? Will anyone hire me? What about the job market? What's going to be going on with the job market? And will anyone see the value of this or will this break become a scarlet letter that brands me in a way that is bad and makes it so nobody wants to hire me? What if I never get another job? And
Mm.
that is, like, the primary, I think, fear that my clients or potential clients even come with. And the second one, of course, is, like, affording a break. What if I run out of money? What if I don't get a job when I come back, so I really run out of money? So it's those 2 fears are probably at the forefront of the conversations that I have.
Okay, so it's the fear of maybe even not finding a new place after you take the break because what are people going to think of me if I take the break, which is very valid. Okay, so how do you help people overcome a fear like that?
Yeah, we talk about it and I make them do in the break blueprint. I have everyone start with that. We do a purpose statement and 3 to 4 themes that define your break. So if people come to me on a break or at the end of a break, we'll retroactively figure out what those themes were. But if somebody comes to me before they've taken a break, we'll proactively, dig around in their spirit and their brain and figure out what they want those things to be. But once you have your purpose statement and themes, you have the way to articulate clearly the value of your break and the intention behind your break. And that makes all the difference. A break is an asset, but you have to know what kind of light to cast on it to make it shine as an asset, right? If you roll up to an interview with thinking that it's this hindrance or this albatross on your back that you're carrying around, like you're going to feel like energetically the equivalent of this, like, oh my God, please don't ask me about my break. I don't even really know what to say about it. Like, this is so awkward. Like, I hope that I just want to tell them I'm good at my job. Like, I hope that they don't hold that against me,
Yeah.
right? That energy doesn't help anyone. But if you've done your purpose statement, if you've done your themes, when you go to that interview, for example, you can show up like, yeah, this break was actually life changing. I am a high performer. I hold myself to a high standard. And when I realized I was not performing at the standard that I know I'm capable of, I took the leadership position, took myself out, gave myself what I needed, refilled my cup, had some adventures, restored, and I'm so excited to come back and contribute at that level again. And I'm back and I'm
Mm.
ready to go. And this is why I love your company. That's a different energy, right? And so having a purpose statement and themes gives you the power and the confidence to know how to articulate what this break was about in a way where you're selling it and highlighting it as an asset. So when my clients are coming to me with these fears, once we've developed those two essential elements, they feel more empowered to talk about it, whether it's already happened or it's going to happen, and they're telling people about the break they're going to be taking. And from that place, they can show up much more powerfully and really feel more confident. So the fear of like, how will I even talk about this when I'm done with my break is something that contributes to that uncertainty of will I find a job? And then practically, I just tell them, imagine a factory where a bunch of hamsters are running on hamster wheels and you're a hamster and you get off and you go live in the grass and you run around and you sunbathe and you take your medicine and you feel like the most supercharged hamster. When you come back to interview for a job, you have the same experience you had before, the same expertise, the same network, right? And the same education. You have all that with you,
Oh
but now
yeah.
you're looking for a job. And the difference is you're this buff, happy hamster. All those other
Hmm.
hamsters are like barely keeping up. Like they have like little broken hamster wrists and stuff, and they're just doing their best to like keep running on the wheel because they're so burnt out. And you get to come in there with all the same skills and be like, and I feel great. I can
Yeah.
run a marathon. What do you need from me? So it really can be an asset if you choose to see it like that.
What an excellent metaphor. I love the hamster metaphor. Okay. And think about it. That employer is going to be like, whoa, you took 2 years off and discovered yourself and you're happy and you're feeling really good about yourself and you want to come work here? Like that's going to flatter the employer, if anything. And if
Yes.
it doesn't, then that's not the right employer for you.
Right.
It's just the
Then
reality.
it's
This will
not.
help you understand, do I want to go work here if this person can't accept that I took a break? But the thing is, 99% of people are going to be able to accept it because one,
Yeah.
they're interviewing you for a reason. And two, you chose them after taking this long break where you could choose anybody.
Yeah, and to your point, it lets you know cultural fit. Like, you don't want to be somewhere where people think that you taking time off to like care for yourself is a bad idea, right? Like that's just a no-go. And yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I had a recruiter that told me my break was a red flag and that I needed to be mentally prepared to take a demotion and or a pay cut. And I
Wow.
decided that she was wrong. Yeah. I mean, it was scary
Good.
when she told me that, but I decided she's wrong. I'm not going to work with her. And she doesn't know what my break was. She didn't live my break. She doesn't even know me. And
Yeah.
she was wrong. I got 5 job offers, 5 weeks, raises, promotions, career changes, dream job. Like she was just so wrong. And I also want to add to what you just said. Not
Hmm.
only did I use my break as an asset, but the job I took, the dream job, it asked for 5 years of previous work experience. And I only had 3. So I came in with a 20-month break and only 3 years of experience for a job that wanted 5. But here's what I
Yeah.
knew. I was so freaking passionate about that industry. And from my personal experience, I knew more than a lot of people that had been in that career were going to come in there knowing because I've been living that for a decade. And I
True.
also went to one of the best companies for market research. I was working at General Mills and they, have an amazing training program. And so I was like, please. They can't touch this. And so with that energy, right? Coming in with that energy and having the nerve to actually apply and to show up. And my manager told me after they hired me, when my resume and cover letter, which the cover letter is key, right? Explaining the break, highlighting like the value I bring, even though I acknowledge that I don't have the 5 years.
Mm.
When he saw that come across, he ran to the person next door, his peer, and said, "I think we found our person," because they had been looking for a while. And he was like, "I think I kind of knew it when I saw your resume and your cover letter come across."
Amazing. Listen, I commend you for taking a leap, for creating not just taking a leap, let's back up, for creating a plan, for recognizing and having awareness that you didn't feel the way that you wanted to feel, that something was off, that you needed to take this break for yourself, planning it out, taking the leap, having the difficult conversation to make that possible, then continuing even on the break to become uncomfortable and traveling to different countries. And at some points, you were with other people. At other points, you were alone in a land of a different language where you're staying with someone who speaks a different language. Like, I commend you for jumping into the discomfort and becoming a better person as a result. And now sharing this experience with other people to help them do the same thing. So I commend you for that. That is super cool. And I think above all, if this conversation was anything for anyone, it's inspirational of you don't have to fit into this mold and work at the same place forever or jump from one job to another immediately. Like, you may have to do that, but what if you plan instead to not do that and fulfill that plan? Like, you've shown that it's possible. And I know you've got your book too, which we didn't even mention your book yet, but we talked about probably a lot what's in the book, but your book is going to go deep in depth onto all these things. And for those listening, the name of Katrina's book is Taking a Career Break for Dummies. So based on the title, I'm guessing you make it very simple for everyone to understand and apply. What would you say about your book? What's your book going to give people even more so than this conversation will?
Yeah. Well, so my book is, yay, actually part of the official For Dummies series. So the publisher sought
Whoa.
me out. Yeah, it's a For Dummies book. The publisher found me and they wanted to write about this topic. And they're like, "I think you're the person. Would you like to write a book on this?" I'm not an author. I'd never been an author. I had a lot of imposter syndrome when it came to thinking about how am I going to write a freaking For Dummies book with a publisher? And this wasn't even on my radar. But of course, it's an amazing opportunity. So I said yes. And I think what was very exciting to me about this book, besides the fact that it has a very like well-trusted, well-known brand behind it, is that the book I wanted to write was a book about how to break this down into small steps and include the life coaching mindset stuff so that wherever in the journey you're getting stuck, is it saving money? Is it giving your notice? Is it planning for the break? Is it resting and not overdoing it and trying to obsessively be productive on your time off? Is it coming back? Is it talking about it on your resume, right? Whatever your challenge was, mental, tactical, I wanted the book to walk you through it in a very hand-holding kind of way. And so I love that Dummies books are reference books. And I basically got to write the exact book I wanted. It has an insane index. So you can flip through and find like, what do I do about health insurance? Right. It's just really broken down to a very granular level. And
Yeah.
it took me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to write, 9 months of writing. It
Wow.
went from idea to in Barnes& and Noble in 364 days. It was a very fast process, but
Man.
I just feel yeah, I just feel so proud of having it out there in the world, and I think more than anything, it's everything I've ever learned about a break, coaching nearly 100 people and going through 2 myself, and I feel like it really makes it simple, so I feel very proud about that.
You should. This is
Thank
awesome.
you.
I had no idea that was an actual For Dummies book, which is like
Yeah.
so cool that they sought you out and
Yeah.
found you and was like, wow, this is a really cool topic. It just goes to show how little of this is happening and how much more it needs to happen if a For Dummies book is being created about it. Like, and now
Yeah.
more people are going to find it because it's already part of an established brand, which everyone knows. Not that you wouldn't have sold your own book a lot, but the reality is
Oh,
this
yeah.
is a very niche topic. And
Yes.
this helps it reach even more people, which
Yeah.
fulfills your mission of getting out there more. So cool. I love this. This is amazing. So if let me ask you this, if people want to dive deeper into this, obviously buy the book, but where's the best place that people can follow you and stay connected with you?
Yeah, if you wanna dive deeper or you wanna follow me, the best way to do it, I have a free download. It's 45 epic things my clients have done on a break. So over the years, I've collected 45 of the most interesting, like inspiring things that they've done and just made it into a simple list because a lot of times people have trouble imagining what they would do on a break or imagining what it could look like. And so if you want to check out that free download, you'll also be joining my mailing list and I send out tips, resources, stories, updates on the book about weekly, once every 1 or 2 weeks so you can stay connected and I reply personally to all of my emails so you can also just reach me that way.
Awesome. Cool. So everyone, I'm going to have Katrina's email in the description below, as well as her website, where the first thing you're going to see on that website is one of the first things is the free resource right at the top right. Her website is kmcgeecoaching.com. And for those who can't go to the description, it's KMCGHEE coaching.com. So go check out her website. This is awesome. I'm so happy Roger connected us. Like, thank you for doing what you did and doing what you do so that we can have this conversation. And it was a pleasure to meet you, Katrina. This has been great.
That was awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much. I loved it.
This is a really inspirational conversation, guys. So if you found this interesting, if you're racking your brain now about how can I make this happen for myself, then please go to Katrina's website, download that free resource. You're going to see, and this will help you plan for your break too. You can see what these other 45 individuals did on theirs, and you can say, oh, that would make sense. That would make sense. I could use that. And we went over a lot in this conversation, but to really get granular, to really dig into the details and really dive into the step that you're in now, grab a copy of Katrina's book. Again, the title is Taking a Career Break for Dummies. I'm going to have a link in the description to grab that, as well as Katrina's email if you'd like to reach out and dig a little bit deeper and maybe even have a conversation with her. I hope you loved the conversation. This was a really fascinating one, very different than what we normally do. If you did love it, then please share this episode with one other person who could use a career break or a sabbatical or a break in general, someone who's burnt out. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.